Thanks, Keith. I'm Tim. So, since I work for a form field analytics company and I like measuring things, I've decided to tell my story through the medium of words, photos, and graphs. But a month ago, I didn't think I'd be giving this talk. Let's see if this works. See, a month ago, my home was causing a denial of service to a remote Welsh lane, and my home was at risk of a major service outage. But more on that a little bit later. We hear people talking about lean startup and the lean startup methodology, and we know it's a good way to prototype companies. But can the same tools be used to prototype big changes in your life and work? Anyone remember Facebook? Like, back in the day. Back before Timeline, back when it did one thing. I mean, I don't. Sometime maybe it had a focused UI. Maybe at one point it did just one thing. And then they added a bit, and suddenly Facebook's putting me in wizard robe and hat and sending pictures of me unexpectedly to my friends, like literally. What happened? The thing is, there are parts of Facebook, love it or hate it, that are genuinely useful. But there's so much clutter, so much going on, so much that doesn't matter, that it's hard to figure out what you actually should focus on. And 2.5 years ago, it felt someone had designed my life like Facebook is today. 2.5 years ago, I was looking around my room at all of the downsides of being young and employed in technology. Lots and lots of stuff. An electric guitar, a bass guitar, many old computers, a mixing desk, 300 unread business books. It was full of aspiration, but empty of fulfillment. And it felt like my house was barely working for me. I mean, sure, it ticked the entire technical specification of a house. You know, it had a roof, it had a bed, a kitchen, a bathroom, a washing machine. It was safe-ish, secure-ish. It was remarkably cheap. Somehow we had responsive and helpful landlords. Somehow I still counted my housemates as friends. But I liked traveling, and it felt like I spent most of my life on a train. A train to visit friends, a train for work, a train to travel. It felt like I was living out of a rucksack, only seeing my home for 30 seconds, in between dropping my stuff and going to sleep. And what was the point in this house? What was the point in all of this stuff that I never used? So what should a home do? I mean, it should probably do what every other product should do. It's a tool to help you be more badass. So it feels like most homes have kind of marginal badassery. My first ever flat was gorgeous. Renovated mill with exposed stonework, and on my bathroom floor there wasn't lino, there were pebbles. But we couldn't put anything on the walls, we couldn't change the decor, we couldn't have any kind of parties there, and it made me think, like, what are the essentials of a home? What does every home need? I mean, the essentials of a home are probably like warmth, shelter, somewhere to sleep. And so for a home to be badass, for me, it probably means like helping me do lots of outdoor sports in different parts of the country, to be able to lie on my laptop downloading lolcats, and, you know, flexibility to change things if I want to. So I read about this guy who converted a van, quit his job, and traveled around Southern Europe. And I thought, maybe I could do the same thing, but without the quitting my job and without the traveling around Southern Europe. Nah, I thought, this is silly. What I really want to do is, you know, start a company and live the startup hype dream. Why? So, well, when I exit that company successfully, of course, then I'll be able to build a van, convert it, and travel more. Maybe I spy a secret shortcut. So, armed with £10,000 in savings and my dummy's guide to woodworking, I bought my first car, a long wheelbase Mercedes Sprinter van, picked up my long unused power drill, and started building a home on wheels. The design phase revolved around this bunch of assumptions, but the riskiest assumption was that I had no fucking clue if I'd enjoy living in a van. I mean, what was the smallest amount of building I could do to find out? I didn't really know the answer to this question, so I stuck with the question I did know, which was that I had a month off work to build something I could move into before my house expired. So when that deadline came and I moved in, the list of things that were kind of completed was about half of what I'd hoped to be in that list. And as I spent my first few months in the van, this is things I think I need versus what I actually need. As I spent my first few months in the van, I rapidly learned that what I thought should be in a minimum livable product was mostly wrong. There were things that I thought were release critical that could easily and desirably be outsourced. There were things far down my priority list that were far more important than expected. There's a big risk when you take an existing way of doing things and replace it, that you replace one way of doing things with another very similar way of doing things. For example, my old house had a washing machine. If I'd said, my new van home needs a washing machine, I'd have some very difficult and distracting engineering challenges putting a washing machine in a van. They might be interesting to solve, but they're not going to help me be faster and cheaper and more badass and figure out whether this will work for me. If I'd said, I have a need for clean clothes on a regular basis, I might investigate outsourcing that job. Personally, I don't really enjoy hanging up clean clothes, so when I learnt I could give a laundrette £8 and have all my clothes washed, dried, folded, and ready to pick up the next day, well, to be honest, that seemed like a trade-off I should have made years ago, like even when I had a washing machine. I didn't need a shower. I needed to be clean most days, and my office had a shower. I didn't need a microwave. I needed the ability to feed myself warm food. I didn't need a Hoover. I needed the ability to keep my floor clean. If you use this framework, the minimum product can be a lot more minimum than you believe. I've been living in a van now for 2 years, and some of the things I'm not going to talk to you about is being broken into, living for 2 years without running water, or being mistaken for doggers. I'm not going to talk to you about how the winters aren't as bad as you're imagining. I'm not going to rattle on about toilets, about 12-volt power, or why the scariest enemy is mold and how central heating is the best weapon against it. As much as I'd love to, I'm not even going to sing the praises of EE in detail, talk about my over-engineered mobile internet setup, and explain how I've got better internet access than many people in the centre of Manchester. One of the biggest problems with living in my living situation is that I've scaled a minimum livable product. 2.5 years ago, the aim was to find out as quickly as possible if that would work. I gave no thought to life after that point. It wasn't the most important thing. And at the time, that was the right decision to make. It turns out it works for me. And having spent 2 years living in it, what I really should do is throw it all away and build version 2. But that's much easier with software than hardware, and much easier with products you don't live in. So I'm probably not going to do that right now, for the moment. With networks, we're often trying to find the balance between flexibility and scalability. To be able to set out to do what we set out to do, with adequate room to adapt if plans change. I wonder if there are big changes in your work and life that you can figure out ways to create a minimal prototype for first. Maybe you're thinking of going to work abroad somewhere, let's say Bulgaria. To test it out, maybe you could go and spend a month living in somewhere like Blackpool. I mean, it's probably as cheap as Bulgaria and probably a little bit less enjoyable. So one of the worst things about your house being a van is scheduled maintenance. When your van has scheduled maintenance, say you have an MOT and service done, you know you're going to be homeless for a few days, so you can make arrangements and take what you need. With a major service outage, the transition to unexpectedly homeless can be very rapid. So when my home was blocking an entire Welsh lane, stuck on a hairpin bend, unable to get enough traction to reverse or enough lock to turn the bend, and at risk of grounding in several places, I wondered what I was going to be in for. Was this a major service outage, or was this the end? Would I be waving goodbye to the van, never to see it again? And what about all my possessions inside it? Fortunately, some incredible service desk engineers from the recovery garage came to the rescue. They swore a lot, laughed, almost gave up, broke their toe strap, pulled some incredible recovery gymnastics so my home could move again. And it turns out the only damage was cosmetic, and with a bit of duct tape, I was good to drive home to Manchester. So I've lived in my van for 2 years now, and it's helped make it easier for me to do the things I want to do, go the places I want to go, and see the people I want to see. It's helped me be more badass, and it's helped me focus on experiences over possessions. And at least now, on my Tinder profile, I can say I'm a homeowner and I drive a Mercedes. Thanks very much. I'm happy to take any questions, but I'll also be in the bar later. I am the only thing between you and beer.
No, you're not, actually.
And questionnaires. I bet you're excited for them.
Okay, so any questions for our white van man?
Super. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim.